Happy Monday, Dog Nation. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Pella Window and Door. Today is a great day because Georgia begins practices today, and Kirby Smart and some Georgia players kind of previewed some of that yesterday. We will hear from them on today's show and really throughout the week there as well as, boy, there's craziness in the world, but all seems right. We have regular football stuff to talk about. We've got some of that today. I'm going to begin today's show with a very powerful statement or two from one of the key vocal leaders from this Georgia team, UGA safety Richard LeCounte. Kirby Smart had a little bit of a verbal wrestling match over what the offense is going to look like this season. We'll also deal with that. Injury updates, John STINCHCOMB, as a part of a Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update. Full slate today. Great to have you as a part of it. DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Pella Window and Door, begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, viewed to be the best.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
So I'm going to tell you something off the top of the show that's probably not going to be all that surprising to you, and then we will make it very quickly be about football. I'm not really good, never have been, at New Year's resolutions. I have tried to make them, but they've just never gone very well for me. And by the way, that's not a huge surprise, almost certainly. You tune into the show, if you watch it on video, one day you kind of see me looking really puffy. Every now and then I'll kind of get back down to what appears to be my fighting weight, and I just kind of fight battles like that. A lot of goals, a lot of things I want to do, and sometimes just doesn't quite come together the way that I want it to. Many of you are probably very much the same way. I am just a normal guy in that regard. The motivational experts that are out there would say, well, you've got to do something stronger than a goal. You have to have something stronger than a goal if you want to get something big done. A goal is easily disregarded. Most New Year's resolutions have, fallen by the wayside before January is done, and the overwhelming majority, by the time the month of March rolls around, people just don't have their New Year's resolutions anymore because a goal is a fairly weak idea. They would say, well, you've got to turn it into an intention. You've got to intend to do something. The word intention in the minds of many is just a stronger word. It's easier to get something done when you view, instead of a goal, something you hope to do, something you intend to do. The level of focus that you have is even stronger. Well, if that's true, and I have no way of knowing if it is or not, let me give you an even stronger word than that. If the word intention, you intend to do something, is stronger than hoping you do something, just having that be a goal, then wouldn't the strongest word of all at least seem like to be on a mission? I'm on a mission to get something done. If I was on a mission to lose weight, or a mission to save money, or a mission to, I don't even know what else, learn foreign language. If you're on a mission to get that done, then the strength of your desire to make it happen just seems all that much more strong. It just seems stronger, right? Well, if that is true, and I believe there's a chance that it is, I thought it was very interesting yesterday, and I'm probably guilty sometimes of reading too much into words, noticing little things, maybe more than I possibly should, but Georgia safety Richard LeCounte spoke last night about the start of UGA practices. That does begin today, and if you're a UGA fan, I think you're going to really like this. More than once, Richard LeCounte used the word mission in talking about how he views the upcoming season, and I think that mission is just sort of a cool alpha word. I just think it's kind of a cool word to use. In one respect, he was kind of asked, hey, you made the decision to come back for your senior year. You possibly could have gone to the NFL draft, but you made the decision to come back to Georgia here for this season. And in speaking about this yesterday, that's the first hint that we got from LeCounte that he views himself as being on a mission this year. Here's LeCounte.
I wanted to come back and play ball again for Georgia. I think my time here was done and my mission wasn't completed, so I came back, to be able to try to lead a team and go for a national championship.
I mean, that's it right there. That's just about perfect. Listen, I'm a Georgia fan. I got Georgia gear on today. Most of you that are watching or listening are Georgia fans. You couldn't ask much more from your favorite players than to hear something like that to start a new season. Practice is about to begin. It's going to be harder than ever before. Georgia practice is always difficult. They're made more difficult this year because of the extra precaution you have to take for coronavirus. And Richard LeCounte says, hey, I ain't worried about all that kind of stuff. I'm not thinking about the NFL. Maybe I could have gone and play on Sundays this fall. Maybe I could have done that. But I got a mission. I got unfinished business here at Georgia. I want to win a national championship. And if we ended the show right there, I think most of you would just sort of feel like it was time well spent thus far today, because that's the kind of edge you want one of your senior leaders to have. You love the idea of believing that he's on a mission for this upcoming season. It was also cool from LeCounte, though, to use that same kind of idea, mission for the upcoming year, extra level of focus, undenied in your pursuit. LeCounte also talking about that same mission mindset as you deal with the extra challenges of coronavirus and social distancing and wearing masks and things like that, that in terms of how LeCounte views himself and presumably how he'll lead the rest of his defense, that all those extra precautions you have to take, that's all just part of the same mission. There's that same word again. Here's Richard LeCounte again.
Obviously it's not like any other camp that I've been trying to approach or anything like that, but I'm just ready to, play football, man, and be able to go around and have my teammates make plays and get back to basically being normal. I don't really have too much emotion, like I said, build up about it. I'm here to work. I'm pretty sure all my teammates is here on the same mission. We came here to get the job done, man, and we're taking every precaution and protocol that we need to stay safe and keep our season going. We're willing to take it because, it takes what it takes.
You got to have those senior leaders, man. It takes what it takes. We're all on the same mission. And for LeCounte, the coronavirus stuff, the social distancing stuff, the extra precautions is just part of the task of getting the job done towards a national championship. That is good stuff from Richard LeCounte. We'll actually come back and have more on that topic in just a moment, but let me kind of transition back to the on-field part of this, because LeCounte isn't the only defensive leader for Georgia. Others seemingly kind of taking that same tone. This is a team this year that, while a lot of the discussion, the interest will be in offensive changes, you better believe we'll get there before we're done today. New quarterback, lots of newness on offense, but the same old for the Georgia defense is a big part of the winning equation for UGA this year. It expects to be one of the best defenses in the country. Veteran players like LeCounte are a part of that, in the same way that a guy like Richard LeCounte told reporters yesterday that he's on a mission to be the best that he can be so the defense can be the best that it can be so they can eventually, as a team, enjoy a national championship. That same kind of mentality was also present in a guy like Eric Stokes, another one of these veteran guys in that Georgia secondary who just believes that this defense has a chance to be special and that a lot of Georgia players contribute towards that goal along the year for a group that we already know is really, really deep. Here is a very similar tone being established by Georgia cornerback Eric Stokes.
I know for a fact, it's a lot of confidence. Pretty much we feel like we trying to be the best that we can be. So, it doesn't matter what it is. We going to compete every day. We going to do everything it is, because I know for a fact, we is a deep unit. I know for a fact that any one of us can go out there and start any game on a Saturday and pretty much be the superstar. So we just all out here competing, trying to be the best we could be.
So let me wrap up this topic by saying two things. One thing I think you already know, and then hopefully a new idea at the end of all of this. When you hear Stokes talk, when you hear LeCounte talk, it is pretty obvious that mentally this defense seems to be focused where it needs to be. If you could bottle up and sell that level of attention to detail, intensity, focus, then coaches could get rich just selling that, because they are speaking the way that every coach hopes their players speak. And for the most part, you all already kind of know that about both LeCounte and Stokes. It's the reason why they were tabbed to speak to reporters the day before practice begins, because they just have the right mindset and therefore are likely to say the right thing. However, let me kind of bring something I hope is kind of new to this discussion to kind of wrap all of this up. You heard LeCounte a moment ago talking about the COVID procedures, the social distancing, the things like that, as kind of an extension of the regular preparation to start the year. And this is what I think is really true. When you've got that mission-based focus, the way that LeCounte spoke about, when you've got that desire to be the best as a unit, the way that Eric Stokes just talked about, I do think that increases the likelihood that you will also have the right level of focus you need to make sure the season itself even gets a chance to finish. We're going to do more of this on the show before we're done. Managing young people's behavior is just a difficult thing to do. And just telling them to do the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing oftentimes doesn't work. Many of you who watch and listen are high school teachers. You understand all of that, or you have high school-age children or college-age children. It's just difficult to extend that message. That you've got to have a reason for what you're asking them to do. And the chance of being a part of a great season, potentially a national championship, might be the level of motivation and focus these Georgia players need to do the hard stuff this year and endure the challenges of not quite knowing from one day to next how things might change. Kirby Smart spoke about that yesterday too, and we'll probably get more into this topic throughout the week, but listen to the mental fatigue that Smart previews as a part of the upcoming season, the challenges of just dealing with a lot of uncertainty. And as Smart says this, think about what LeCounte said a moment ago, that if you're truly on a mission, enduring all of this is maybe just made just a little bit easier. Here's Kirby Smart.
Adaptability is going to be one of the most important factors of this team, and the teams that handle it best will probably be at an advantage. We always talk about, our camp being about mental and physical toughness. One of the most important things about this team is going to be mentally be able to handle change, and fast change, because we've seen in the last 5 months things change, especially when you're dealing with COVID. I mean, we've seen updates that were one way one day, and then the next day they were another, and they've changed, and the kids have had really a change of way of life outside of our building and inside of our building both. And who can handle those adjustments? Whose team cannot get lost in worrying and concerning themselves with things they can't control and really worry on things they can, like, do I wash my hands enough? Do I wear my mask enough? Do I social distance when I have an opportunity to? Those are the things that are going to determine the outcome of our team and our guys' ability to play.
Very simple summary from me. This is one of the ways in which normal people are just like college football players and college football coaches. We've all potentially been undone by the uncertainty of the coronavirus. We've all been potentially frustrated about it at times as well. Those of us who get through that, though, tend to have our eye on some sort of mission, some sort of major goal that we are dead set on accomplishing. It just makes enduring the uncertainty easier. That's true for normal people in regular walks of life. I think it's especially true for college football players. And I think that Georgia is lucky to have leaders like Richard LeCounte, Eric Stokes, to help get that done this fall. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Hello to you, and thanks for being with us no matter how you get to us today, live on video, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We're on the radio at noon on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref, and available as a podcast wherever you find them. All the various podcast platforms, Apple, the Android devices, Spotify, everything else. Just glad to have you with us, including posting the show at the world-famous DawgNation.com every single day. And today's show would not be possible without our friends at Pella Window and Door. They help equip your house with energy-efficient windows and doors. There's a lot of value associated with that. Extra curb appeal could mean increased resale value, keeping the energy inside your house, not letting that air conditioning escape out. Could reduce your bills. I mean, there are lots of important features and benefits, value that comes your way when you install these energy-efficient windows and doors from our friends at Pella Window and Door. You can also schedule a consultation right now with Pella Window and Door, either in person or through video teleconferencing. They can walk you through all the steps. It's a no-pressure consultation. It's a great way to start your relationship with Pella Window and Door of Georgia. They're family-owned and operated. They got a branch right here in Georgia, but they also have the resources that come with a national company there as well. So you get the best of both worlds with our friends there, and a great offer. A couple more days to take advantage of this. 10% off your qualifying project and 0% APR for 36 months. A couple different ways to get in touch. It's PellaBranch.com. That's PellaBranch.com, or give them a call in their Dunwoody showroom at 404-445-2979. The number, once again, 404-445-2979. Pella Window and Door of Georgia is viewed to be the best. All right, in just a minute, we're going to get John STINCHCOMB as a part of a Marlowe's Tavern Insider Updater. A lot with John on the start of UGA practice, our DawgNation analyst, the former Bulldogs All-American. Before we do that, though, let's go around the doghouse today, here assisted by AAA. And there was a very interesting exchange yesterday involving a reporter and Kirby Smart over what the Georgia offense has been in the past, and with Todd Monken taking over, how many changes we can expect to see for this upcoming season. This has been a sensitive subject for Kirby Smart before. It is apparently still a little sensitive for Smart. A lot of y'all enjoy Smart going back and forth with the media from time to time. This is certainly an example of that. A little bit of a testy exchange near the end last night of the Kirby Smart press conference. Here is Kirby with a reporter.
Do you expect your offense to be radically different than what you have run in previous years? Or is this Todd Monken putting his fingerprints on the Georgia way?
Define the Georgia way.
Running the ball a lot, I guess, and play action maybe.
Running the ball a lot. Okay. Well, I believe in doing whatever you have to do to win. So I'm going to let you define it how you feel comfortable defining it. And then I'm going to define it the way that gives us the best chance at success. And we want to get the best football players we can on the field. We want to be able to score points. We think it takes that to win games. And that's never been any issue with me. I've never got on the offense coordinator's headphones and said, please run the ball right here. Please run the ball right here. That's never been the case. Unfortunately, I think some people might believe that, but that's not my goal, is to score points. I've never said, please don't score more points. Please don't score. I've never done that. So we're going to do all we can to score points. And I think the reason Monken was hired is he's a really good football coach, and we're going to use his experiences and his strengths and the players' strengths, which is much more important, and we're going to put those at the forefront and hopefully have success.
Listen, I love Kirby Smart. I'm a fan of Georgia. I'm entertained, like many of you are as well, by the occasional back and forth between Kirby and a reporter. Sometimes that's just breaking the monotony of an otherwise boring press conference. But if Kirby Smart's not going to pretend that the Georgia offense of the last couple of years hasn't been too run-heavy and that hasn't injured Georgia's chance of winning a national championship, then what are we really doing here? The facts are obviously what they are. Monken is here for a reason. He needs to transform the Georgia offense, and you already know this, but I'll say it anyway. If that transformation does not occur, Georgia's not winning a national championship. So, interesting exchange to kick off the upcoming season as Kirby Smart talking about how that offense might be different here this year. It's Around the Doghouse. It's assisted today by our friends at AAA, and make sure you take advantage of a great cool thing from AAA. It's the AAA Savings Hack Pack. It's a combination of AAA benefits worth over $1,000. The Savings Hack Pack includes free career assistance, free identity theft protection, up to 85% off prescriptions as well, which is really cool, and discounts on food and essentials, which is always a great thing when you're on the road. The Hack Pack is a part of every annual membership, just like AAA's legendary roadside assistance. So join AAA by going to this website. It's AAA.com/go savings. That's AAA.com/go savings. You can discover just how easily a AAA membership can help pay for itself. It's great to have you here today. It's DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door. Update on Georgia injuries to come here in just a moment. But for now, on everything going on with Georgia as it begins practice officially today in something that really feels like the start to a normal season. We'll see if it continues to feel that way. Let's talk to John STINCHCOMB as a part of a Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update. We'll say hello to John STINCHCOMB. He's a former UGA All-American. He's our analyst here at DawgNation, breaking down the things happening between the white lines, and he's always just a really credible voice talking Georgia football, so it's great to have him as a part of a Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update today. John, I'll say good morning to you, and I want to bring you in on what we were just talking about, and I'll restate what I said for our audience at large a moment ago. I love Kirby Smart. I'm a huge fan of Georgia. Press conferences can get boring, so a little bit of a testy exchange here and there just kind of breaks up the monotony. I'm kind of entertained by that, frankly, even if I'm on the receiving end of that, and I guess from time to time with various coaches I probably have been. However, if Kirby Smart wants to insinuate what he insinuated a moment ago, that the offense of previous years hasn't been too run-heavy, I think that's wrong, and I think that Todd Monken needs to be here for a reason to help bring the Georgia offense into a little bit different, I guess, cross a different threshold than it's been in recent years. And I don't want to see Georgia completely lose the physicality that's defined the program the last few years, but if Georgia's not more explosive offensively, I don't believe it's capable of winning a national championship, just given how explosive the national championship offenses in recent years have been. Where do you come down on that discussion?
Well, I appreciate Coach Smart and his approach. I mean, he's protecting his own. He is standing up for his coaching staff and his players, and I respectfully disagree. I think you can look back, especially last year's season, and the run game was predictable at times and fairly limited, and I thought the game became stagnant, and there were some real struggles. So I think we can fairly recognize that and still appreciate the fact that Kirby's coming to the defense of his people, and that's the outward message, and there was also an inward message, whereas we've got a new offensive coordinator in place. And so you can recognize both those things and say outwardly, hey, we haven't been X, Y, and Z, but the actions of bringing in a Todd Monken and trying to create some new life in areas of this offense that have not been successful, I think is the right step. So that's where I land. Is I can appreciate it. I see what he's doing, and as a player, as somebody on his team, that speaks volumes of saying, I'm going to protect us. This is our team, our organization, and when I speak of it, I'm going to protect our own, but I'm also going to do what's best and move this program forward.
I think that's a really interesting way of looking at that and saying that. And if Kirby were sitting here across me right now in a candid conversation, he may say something to the effect of, listen, I don't owe you an explanation for every single thing I'm about to do. Just simply watch me for the results. And if he said that, I believe he'd be accurate in saying it that way. And by comparison, a year ago, LSU coach Ed Orgeron did talk about opening up the offense and did talk about making major changes, and they happened. However, honesty does compel me to admit that that wasn't the first time that Orgeron had proclaimed that to be about to happen for LSU, and his predecessor, Les Miles, had kind of said some of the same things, and sometimes those preseason predictions from the head coach ended up not coming true. So I guess there is a flip side of this coin of if you go out there and say, hey, we're about to do this, we're about to do that, we're going to usher in this, this brand new offense. There are a lot of coaches who've said that in the past. Sometimes it's actually worked out that way. Other times it kind of hasn't always worked out the way the preseason proclamations might have suggested that it would have.
Well, I think back to the years of like Coach Spurrier on one side, trying not to demean his opponent, but doing so efficiently and effectively. He can eviscerate his opponent pretty quickly. And
sure.
It was almost humorous. And you contrast that with like a Lou Holt, who, could have one of the best rosters in the game and tell you how great his opponent looks and how they're going to struggle. So, coaches play the game better than anyone. They know their approach, and I think those are two pretty good polar examples of there's not one way to approach media and how you use us to get your way with your own team, which is, I think, half the game anyway. You look at how they talk about individual players at times. They're like, golly, he just really needs some work, and he's not where he needs to be, and there's so much talent, but, will he realize his potential? That's a motivator. He knows who he's really talking to is that player directly,
Yeah.
and times like this, I think there's opportunity to speak to your coaching staff just like you would a player.
So one of the things I talked about also before you came on was Richard LeCounte, in speaking yesterday about the start of practice, kind of mentioned the COVID procedures, the extra steps they're taking to keep themselves and their teammates healthy and safe, in the same voice that he kind of talked about the stuff that he's doing just to get ready to play football this fall. And I thought that was really interesting. And I guess my point here is, John, people all across the world in and out of sports are learning that managing behavior, whether it be your own or managing the behavior of somebody else, is just not a very easy thing to do. But for the Georgia players who do feel like they're on some sort of mission this season to win a national championship, to have the best experience they can have, and what might be their final year playing in a Georgia uniform, that little bit of extra motivation because of what the football season can bring might be that extra spice that's necessary to tolerate some things that, frankly, at times I think we all kind of get annoyed by, which are these little things we have to do sometimes for coronavirus and the normalcy of life that for now we don't get to enjoy. The motivation of what could be a special football season really does probably help you take those next steps, I would assume. You're a former player. How would you feel about that?
Well, I think it comes down to focus. You listen to Hard Knocks coach Anthony Lynn talk about managing the chaos, and that's what we do across the board, but in football specifically, there's going to be obstacles. Obviously, we're all dealing with some uncharted ones with the response to COVID. How's that going to impact the team and the organization and who's available? And there's so many what-ifs. But we're also creatures of habit. And getting into a routine and familiar, it's a safe space to grow and thrive. And so the more quick that we can assimilate into this modus of operandi, then the better they're going to be. And I think Richard's speaking to that, of saying, if we can focus on the football stuff. I mean, there's so much more added this season, and safety is a priority, always is in football, but it's a dangerous game. You add that to the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic, and it's not just players, but their families and their coaches and staff members. It affects everyone, and everyone is equally susceptible because there is no immune system or immunity to it at this point. It's that added wrinkle. And I think for the teams that are able to manage that best, you're going to see great leadership and comfort that comes with a plan and operations that they have confidence in. And yeah, when you talk about human nature, I mean, the polar contrast of guys that are saying, I don't feel safe, I'm not going to expose me or my family to play football. I respect that. And what's sad is you contrast that with the other side of seeing college kids, or really professionals too, seeing baseball players, basketball players in the professional ranks that say, you know what, I'm going to keep living my life in the social scene and go to parties and go to places that are of questionable repute and continue to do the things that not only put themselves in jeopardy but their teammates. And that's a difficult balance, especially for college kids that recognize, this is a 3 or 4 year window at best, and they're trying to not only weigh what's best for themselves but also for them, those that are around them.
Use an interesting phrase there, difficult balance. I want to also discuss that, how it impacts the quarterback competition here in just a moment. Before that, though, it's our Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update with John STINCHCOMB. John and I are both huge fans of Marlowe's Tavern. Many of you are as well. And the best way to experience everything the tavern in your neighborhood has to offer is by downloading the brand new Marlowe's Tavern app. Special offers just for folks with the app. You also earn rewards points when you show up there at the tavern in your neighborhood. So that's also a great way to just really benefit from having that Marlowe's Tavern app. You can be updated on the special events that are ongoing. Just a great way to stay connected to Marlowe's Tavern is with the new Marlowe's Tavern app. Get it from wherever you get your apps. And, of course, it's good to have Marlowe's Tavern as a part of our Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update. So, John, on the subject of the quarterback competition for a moment, Kirby Smart did update that a little bit yesterday, confirming that Jamie Newman had dealt with a little bit of an ankle issue during the offseason. It seems like that's fine. JT Daniels not fully cleared for everything associated with football right now, but he's still a part of this competition in a lot of different ways. Mental reps, I guess, is some of what Kirby Smart used to describe that yesterday. But the point here is that I think there's a difficult balance in terms of keeping all the quarterbacks feeling like they're involved in this and making all of them feel like they have a chance to win the job, which is to a degree kind of fair and what you hope to be able to do. But at the same time, when you're trying to split practice reps between so many different guys, I do think you run the risk of beginning a season with a starting quarterback who's gotten less practice time than he otherwise would have if he was treated like the starter the entirety of the process. There are too many quarterbacks probably just to go with one guy. JT Daniels' credentials makes him worth considering on this. And, I'd say the same thing about Dwan Mathis, Carson Beck. They deserve their shot at this too. But it is a difficult challenge of giving some reps to all the different guys and also feeling like that your starting quarterback, whoever it eventually is, to actually begin these games, has been fully worked out enough as the number one quarterback by the time this all gets ready to get going. Would you agree with that assessment of the situation?
Well, I think there are pros and cons, and you're hitting on it in that in normal situation, it's great that you have competition. I think that you bring the talent in the room, and then iron sharpen iron. And usually with the routine of spring training and all your 7-on-7 work, and then you work your way into training camp, you can spread those reps, and everybody gets better, which is a good thing. You push each other, and you raise the bar across the board. Now, with a truncated opportunity, those reps become even more vital. And play to the favor of a JT or a Newman is that they've got so many more reps at full speed because of their past experience and what they're bringing into this camp and not what they're going to get from this camp. Now, learning the system, getting on the same page, you're kind of starting from scratch there because you brought in a new offensive coordinator, and it's a pretty much clean slate across the board. But with the opportunities being so limited, I think you can start, and you want to, with an open competition and let everybody push and feel like they've got a shot, because that's when you get the best from them. But when you get a lot closer to the season, which a couple weeks out, I'm sure there's going to be a premium placed on those practice reps with the ones, and hopefully with these next coming weeks, which we're just talking weeks now and not months. Man, isn't that awesome?
Oh yeah.
It's going to be important for these guys to just start distinguishing themselves.
So this is not a problem.
For the,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's good. I was thinking for the dark horses of DeJuan or Carson or any of these younger guys. Here's your opportunity. It's smaller, but you gotta seize that window when you get it.
I think that's exactly right. And if we stipulate this as a moment, JT Daniels when he's fully healthy versus Jamie Newman battle, this is not a problem. But I do think it's interesting that they are, from a profile standpoint, so different, right? I mean, Newman is a guy that runs, and he also is very good on deep throws. I think the best of JT Daniels in a USC uniform is sometimes shorter, quicker throws. Like I said before, it's not a problem, but the players are so different. What do you think the evaluation process and practice is like when you're really not comparing apples to apples?
Yeah, and I think that could be a good problem because it forces the coordinators to kind of figure out, one, how do you want to attack the defense, and two, you have two different weapons to do so. Their skill set is very different. I think you highlighted that well. But man, what a great place to be is. Who do we want to be? What's our identity? And the fact that you can rotate and change that potentially throughout the year and do so at a high level. I think we saw something similar when the David Green, DJ Shockley era of both very capable quarterbacks that weren't, I think about DJ, he wasn't one-dimensional. I mean, he was a good pocket passer, and he also had exceptional ability on his feet. I think you can say similar things of what Newman was able to do at Wake Forest, and you love the presence that JT brings to that pocket when he stands in there and can rifle that ball in a very small window in the intermediate game. So, as a coordinator, it's exciting, but limited time I think is very much a factor. And if there's ever a season where depth is at a premium, I would say this is one of them, especially with the various protocols in place that, maybe you don't test positive, but you've been exposed. What are the limitations that come with that? And knowing that, you might be a player or two down on any given week because we don't have these bubbles that the NBA creates. I think it's a good thing that you've got capable personnel looking at 2 and 3 deep across the board, especially in the quarterback room where that's a premium. That's, for a lot of teams, you lose that guy and your team is sunk until he gets back. I like the opportunities that Georgia presents and that you've got some capable, at least on paper and what we've seen in other programs, capable contenders that could step right in and you'd feel pretty confident of what they could do.
Well, I'll tell you this, John, as we wrap up here, I think about 90% of what we just talked about was involving something, how it impacts a practice, which eventually impacts a game, which, as you said before, technically only a few weeks away. This is I think a big step for us here. A lot of the off-field stuff that we've talked about over the course of the last couple of months, at least on a day like this, doesn't quite feel as important as what's about to happen during UGA practices. So incredible stuff. I had a good time. I hope it was fun for you. Thanks for being here as a part of our Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update.
Always a pleasure, BA. Go Dogs.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
I like John STINCHCOMB. I say this all the time, but John's got a way of saying what he feels, sharing his opinion, but no one really gets angry about it. Like, John has a way of measuringly, is measuringly a word? In a measured way, considering both sides and, just kind of sharing his opinion, and it's important to have that on a show like this. Really fun stuff as a part of a Marlowe's Tavern Insider Update with John STINCHCOMB here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door. We've got more to hear from Kirby Smart before we're done. I mentioned before, a little bit of an update on JT Daniels. Smart will share that with us before we're done. Pretty much across the board, an update on injuries. We'll just kind of let Smart go on this topic in just a moment. It's important as Georgia begins practice here today. That's not the only big news around the SEC, and it's kind of amazing. In a normal situation, we would have actually probably started with the fact that we're about to find out the Georgia schedule here today. Now, it's amazing. Georgia is practicing, theoretically, around the same time that it's finding out who its first opponent's going to be. Now, Kirby would say that they spend weeks and weeks and weeks working on themselves before they ever work on a week one opponent, so not knowing who your week one opponent is probably doesn't matter all that much, at least in the mind of Kirby Smart. He's always been really, really aggressive about saying that they don't start working on the week one opponent until there's like 2 weeks before the game, and maybe even some cases less than that, he would say. But it isn't unusual. The schedule is about to come out today. We're going to find out Georgia's week one opponent this afternoon. Tonight, we'll find out the full dates for all the games. And I think it's going to be big news. We'll be live on the DawgNation video channels talking about that there this evening. A lot of coverage of that across the board here. I think there's a chance that maybe Georgia and possibly Alabama maybe ends up taking it on the chin a little bit tonight after what happened a few days ago, when most people would say Georgia caught a break by having Arkansas and Mississippi State. Alabama caught a break by who it added to its schedule. There are a lot of, we'll get into the anger here in a moment, but I think the expectation is that maybe Georgia doesn't quite get a favor done for them this time on this, that maybe Alabama doesn't there as well either, because I've always been of the belief, and I hope to be able to try to write this if I possibly can, if I can throw a few sentences together on this topic with some numbers to back it up. But the cluster of when you play games, to me, is almost as important as who you play. But I think if we looked at just SEC play over the course of the last few years, we would see that it's actually really tough to go on long SEC winning streaks. That's my hypothesis on this a bit, that when we look at a record for a team near the end of the year, a lot of that record is on the basis of window dressing, right? You throw in 3 easy non-conference wins, you got a couple bottom-feeding conference teams. Your record in like the actual tough, losable games, for a lot of teams. I mean, you're going to have some moments during a year when you just struggle to get a win, and if you have too many of those games clustered together, then obviously it makes for a difficult schedule. So let's watch the way in which certain teams have certain games kind of clustered closely with each other in terms of actually who has the toughest schedule or not. That'll be worth watching here this evening as the SEC gets ready to announce. And, of course, there were some reporting on this, and ESPN had a story as a for instance on, I guess, some SEC coaches kind of getting into a little bit of a heated exchange last week on the basis of how the schedule was doled out when the extra opponents were added. And I guess the biggest argument here is there's no measurable, definable way that the SEC chose to do this. Now, I am of the belief that what the SEC did was fair. If you look at the two teams most likely to win the SEC East, Georgia and Florida was given a very similar schedule. Different teams. Georgia plays preseason number 3, preseason number 11. Florida plays preseason number 5, preseason number 13 on the basis of the coaches poll. But in terms of what you get from the SEC West, Georgia and Florida have similar schedules. I'm sure that Tennessee feels like it got dumped on. It added 2 much tougher opponents from the SEC West in comparison to what Georgia added. But here's the fact. When you look at what Tennessee has done in recent years, and this is not meant to be like an applause line or a jab at the Vols, the occasional Tennessee fan that might be listening, but Tennessee's had very little success against Georgia, got blown out in their own stadium a year ago. Very little success against Florida going back more than a decade. Tennessee is just not a legitimate SEC East contender. So if you had to give one of these 3 teams a tougher schedule, you'd give it to Tennessee, because it's not like, in my mind, Tennessee's competing for the division anyway. They're about 10 to 12 to 1 odds to get that done according to the betting markets. If Tennessee finds a way to go 6-4, I'll say I was wrong, though. If Tennessee goes 6-4, 7-3 this year, playing a majority SEC schedule, then I will say I think that Tennessee's better than I thought it was. But the honest truth is, I had Tennessee as a team fighting for a winning record back when it was playing a 12-game schedule. I think the SEC-only schedule is going to show and demonstrate the weaknesses that Tennessee currently has. And so I think you see 5-5, something along those lines, as kind of being a realistic outcome for a team like Tennessee, which validates, I think, the SEC's decision to not treat them the same way they would have treated another SEC contender. But it's obviously worth watching. One more thing to get to as a part of our SEC through here for a moment. There was a photo that got a lot of attention over the course of the weekend. Now, here in Georgia, we had our own version of that. I guess it was North Georgia College in Dahlonega that had a lot of students out and about. Dahlonega maybe a little bit more of a downtown scene than you might realize. In fact, there was a country song about that. But nonetheless, the Bama students back on campus, and they're down there in those Tuscaloosa bars. Greg Byrne was the tweet that I guess got the most attention, at least that I saw. Big line to get in. Greg Byrne says, "Who wants sports this fall?" Obviously not these people. He's referencing Alabama students for those of you who are not watching on video. "We've got to do better than this for each other in our campus community. Please wear your masks," he says. And I kind of, I guess, laugh about this, but the honest truth is my kids are young. I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and they're really easy to manage, right? I mean, it's amazing how they've just adapted to wearing masks. They had to wear masks some this summer, and they just put them on. They're wearing masks right now in school, and at least the best that I can tell, I mean, I said goodbye to them this morning. They're in my wife's car going into school. They were both masked up, and neither one of them were tugging on it or anything. They just kind of complied and go right along with it. I've been told that as kids get older, they're not quite as compliant anymore. And in all seriousness, I mean, I've got a lot of friends who have high school age students and, moving into college. And this has been the story the entire time. We're seeing this now because kids are coming back to college campuses, but getting, teenagers, getting young people, getting college age kids to just comply for the sake of compliance, that is not easy. And I'm not surprised that it's challenging on these college campuses. Kids just have a way of kind of doing what they're going to do. I would still say, though, that for athletic directors and university presidents and conference commissioners, that the opportunity to sort of throw up your hand and say, oh, what do you want us to do? We can't do anything. We can't control these kids. You've still got an obligation to lead. You've still got an obligation to try to do your job and, frankly, still have a season, even without total compliance from the people in and around a university community. But obviously, a picture like that got a lot of attention this weekend. Will make that your SEC through. And here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, I want to turn our attention back to the start of Georgia practice and a pretty important topic. Who's hurt? Who's not fully able to participate? Kirby Smart went into a lot of details about that yesterday, starting with Georgia wide receiver Dominic Blaylock.
I'll start with Dom. Dom Blaylock, he is not completely cleared to practice or play. He's going to have a black shirt on. He's working out. He's coming off his ACL, that occurred in the SEC championship game. So he's not completely cleared yet, but he has worked really hard. He's been able to do some straight line running and some workout stuff. The next guy I would talk about is DJ Daniels. Missed some time with an ankle injury. He's almost back, but this small summer access window we've had where we were able to have a little more time than we normally do, he wasn't able to do much during that time. So I wouldn't say he's behind because he's a kid who played a lot of snaps last year, but he'll be back with us kind of full-time starting tomorrow. JT Daniels is not cleared yet. JT Daniels is coming off an ACL surgery as well. He's been able to take some reps. He's been able to throw the ball and do some things, but he's not completely cleared from the knee yet, and he'll still be in a brace for that.
So maybe a semantic difference with Blaylock and Daniels. That's a little bit different than some of the reporting that had been out there on them. Smart did go into more details about some other injuries. Here's Kirby again.
Broderick Jones had an injury, non-football injury, but he's recovered from that. He's back out, taking snaps, taking reps, and has been with us working. Jamie Newman had a mid-foot sprain and was out for a little bit of our summer access period. We're calling it a mini camp, whatever, OTAs, whatever you want to reference that as. He missed probably half of that, not able to work out and do some things, but he was mentally there and able to do a lot of things with the team, and he's back now able to do everything. So Monty's been out a little bit with a little foot injury, but he's taken a lot of reps and played a bunch. Darnell Washington had a small scope in his knee, but it was from an injury in high school that he is back out there and recovered from and practicing, doing everything. Ryan Davis had a small torn meniscus, and he should be back soon, but he's not able to practice right now. Keely Ringo, as a lot of you are aware, he had an old injury from high school that we were trying to see if he could go with. The injury didn't occur here with his shoulder, but he's had a shoulder repair, and he's going to be out for a while. And then Arian Smith had a meniscus repair and should be back sometime during the season, but not sure exactly what date yet.
So interesting stuff there from Kirby Smart. Obviously, you don't want to read too much into that, but the out for a while statement on Keely Ringo suggests that that's maybe, along the lines of something that he's going to be dealing with here for a little bit. So you hate to hear that. Some confirmation, though, on some of the other things that had been reported over the course of the offseason, the Arian Smith stuff, the Darnell Washington stuff. A good number of those Georgia 2020 signees, it would seem, kind of dealing with some of that injury stuff. Ryan Trouble Davis is a linebacker that a lot of you really like. I really like. It seems like he's battled a good number of injuries, even going back to his senior year of high school. You hope, to soon be hearing some good news on the health front when it comes to Davis there. So a lot on that. I guess the headline grabber is going to be the status of JT Daniels. So we'll continue to see how all of that plays out. But a pretty thorough injury update from Kirby Smart as Georgia gets ready to begin practice here today. Gator Hater Update, how about 1,388 days? It's DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. And on video. Boy, that was a lot today. It seems like we just blinked our eyes and did an hour. A lot of Georgia stuff as Georgia get ready to begin practice. Of course, we appreciate the opportunity to keep it going here with our R.S. Andrews cool down. And, listen, I was away yesterday, had some family stuff to do, and when you're outside a lot, you get that little sweat all over your body, and you just kind of feel it, and there's nothing better to like walk in that front door and just be confronted with air conditioning. I love that. That's what R.S. Andrews can do for you if your system's not working the way that it's supposed to be. They can either replace it for you and give you one that's much more efficient and just better working, or if you feel like the one that you have still has some life in it, then just tune back up to factory fresh specs. R.S. Andrews can do that for you too. Find them online at rsandrews.com. Dari and the whole gang over there, R.S. Andrews, will take good care of you. All right, let us get some comments going here as part of our R.S. Andrews cool down. We appreciate all of you being with us here today. Let me just turn down my volume so you don't hear me. And Shelton Tucker says we play Florida week 7. I guess that's his prediction on all of this. I am curious to see where these schedule kind of come in at. Matt Rukavina says, it's a fun offseason when reality mirrors those SEC shorts videos. Some of those coaches have a right to be mad. Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing that I totally agree with. I mean, listen, I have certainly shared my problems with some of the heavy-handed sports media, but for people who are like, it's like somehow unseemly or insulting for SEC coaches to be arguing about a schedule. Listen, all of this still counts. I mean, this year is still going to be a line on your resume. And if you feel like you were handled unfairly, you better believe I'd be arguing about it. I feel like it was actually handled somewhat fairly. I will acknowledge that Georgia got an easier break than it could have gotten, but I think it was handled in kind of a fair way. Ultimately, as I said before, by giving Florida, Texas A&M, when it comes to the SEC West competition, you give Georgia and Florida fairly similar opponents, and there's a huge gap in likelihood of winning the division between Georgia, Florida, and the rest of the SEC East. Tennessee wasn't even in the preseason top 25 coaches poll. So if I was a Vols fan, I would almost certainly be making a different argument right now because it's in their vested interest to argue that way. I would. However, I do think sometimes it's fair to say, yes, we dumped on you, but somebody had to be dumped on, and it's just easier to do that to you because Arkansas fans are very upset. In fact, I almost jokingly said the other day, I think the reason why I didn't tweet this is because I think somebody else had already tweeted. I tried to steal from people. But when Ohio State was looking to get some games together, I was like, they should just go play. Somebody said they should just go play. Arkansas. Arkansas is playing everybody else as it is. So yeah. Joe Moody says Georgia plays Alabama game 2 and Florida game 10. That's my guess. I think there is a chance still that Georgia Alabama is the first game because I think they'd like to come out. I mean, listen, with all the craziness in the world, I think the SEC would love to announce itself emphatically. This is taking a page in a weird way out of the ACC's playbook. It's kind of always had, at least they used to back when they had the kinds of teams that could do this, a big like Monday night week 1 game on Labor Day. For a long time they tried to do that big ACC game to start a year, and that was something they did for many years. This could be the SEC's way of saying, hey, in kind of a cluttered sports landscape right now in September, the sports calendar is still going to be really, really crowded. This is college football, could be college football's way, in particular the SEC's way of saying, hey, look at us, look at what we're about to do here. Marshall Fleming says, I think we will end the season with Florida. I would say there's a chance that's true if the Iron Bowl is the last game for Alabama and Auburn. If they're going to do traditional rivalries at the end of the year, then moving Georgia-Florida to the last game would make some sense. And, normally I'm very protective of traditions. I just think that college football is made special by its traditions. I'm not that obsessed about the Georgia-Florida date, especially in a year like this when the cocktail parties, for the most part, are going to be non-existent. As a attendee of the Georgia-Florida game, I like it in late October because, boy, that Jacksonville Beach area, St. Simons area, Amelia Island area, that's about as perfect as it gets late fall in a place like that. So I like that time when you're visiting there. But in terms of the meaning, this is not third Saturday in October for Tennessee, Alabama, where like the name of the rivalry is the date which it's played. There's not that same kind of connection for that. Connor, you got something?
Yeah, let's keep the Egg Bowl on Thanksgiving night, though.
Yeah, now that is one where, like, for those of us that kind of finished up that second plate of food, things like that, Ole Miss, Mississippi State on Thanksgiving night, that's an important thing to have right there. I would agree with you on that. I don't want to see that one moved. But, which I guess would mean that wouldn't be the last game for both those teams. I guess that's important to keep in mind there. But for the most part, the date for Georgia-Florida, I'm not as into when it's played. Although Christopher White says he thinks it should stay on Halloween. Now, I'll also admit this, and I hope all of you appreciate, when I have a glaring bias, I generally try to acknowledge it. Like I'm wearing the Georgia G on my shirt. Here is a glaring bias that I sort of have, and many of you probably have already put two and two together on this, but I'll say it anyway. My life would be made magnitudes easier if Georgia-Florida was not on Halloween. I have two young kids. Halloween is probably the second biggest day of the year in my household, Christmas being the first. Halloween is literally the second biggest day of the year. I think it's bigger than both my kids' birthdays. My wife loves Halloween. If the cocktail party could not be on Halloween for this year, because after this year, it won't be on a Saturday again, probably for a number of years. If I could get Georgia-Florida to not be on Halloween this year, that would be very, very big for the kid here.
One interesting thing to keep in mind with this game being in Jacksonville and in an NFL stadium is I imagine that the SEC is to want to try and make sure their games aren't too close to each other, such as like the Jags being home the day after that.
That's a good point.
And with the first game of the season, the Jaguars actually are supposed to host the Miami Dolphins on September 24th, the Thursday night game, 2 days before that Saturday. So I would say the odds of Georgia playing Florida first, like we talked about on Cover 4 last week, pretty unlikely.
Also, originally, the Jaguars' schedule only had 6 home games. They're going to play 2 in London, but both the London games have now been canceled, so there are additional dates for Jaguars games that have been added, which kind of complicates that even further. I think it's a really good point. We'll get ready to go. Barry Watkins says, who do you think we play game 1? If I had to bet a dollar bill on this, which I guess technically I shouldn't even speak that way, but if I had to bet a dollar bill on this, I guess I'd say Alabama. Something about that feels like, I don't know. If I had to bet a dollar bill, I believe that Georgia plays Alabama to start the season. Reggie Walker says UGA, Florida, and Jacksonville on Halloween should be themed Nightmare in Jacksonville. I like that idea. Shelton Tucker says he thinks it'll be Vanderbilt. Something tells me that Georgia won't quite be that lucky tonight. But ultimately, I'm not even sure that's necessarily all that important for me anyway. Let me go get these YouTube comments up and rolling here. I've been on Facebook now for a little bit. Boy, fun to be talking about practices, fun to be talking about schedules. No. Fun to be talking about all this kind of stuff here. All right. Oh, goodness gracious alive. Normally, YouTube is very easy to pull up. Not so much. All right. Mike D says probably be Auburn. What about Georgia Auburn to open the season? I didn't even consider that as a possibility, but I guess anything is at least somewhat likely. That'd be pretty wild. That'd be pretty wild. It would give Georgia and, Auburn another extra layer to that rivalry. It's the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Instance a couple of years ago, they played twice in the same season to open a season. There may be a chance that back in the Hurdy Field days didn't they play in Piedmont Park? Didn't Georgia and Auburn play in Piedmont Park at one point in time? Maybe they did play to open a season back then. Well, let's see what else is going on. Frank Patterson says, we'll be doing a cover 4 for the schedule tonight. We will be live on video. I don't know if it's a full-on cover 4, but we will be live for the video for the announcement for sure. CB asking the same question. Yes, we will. Thank you for asking. We will be all over that. I will be on. Mike Griffith coming up after that. So yeah, a lot going on tonight with all of that. Manuel Infante says, all these athletic pass rushers we have, I think we should be able to have a double-digit sack guy this year. I'm hoping so anyway. What are your thoughts? I think it's certainly a possibility. I almost wonder, though, I think there's a way that Georgia can be a great pass rushing team without a double-digit sack guy. I think when you look at some of the teams that have had really good success with that, it's like, what if Ojulari, who had 5.5 a year ago, what if he goes to 8 this year? What if some of your guys that had 2.5 last year, and I think that Georgia had a total of 6 of those, what if they find a way to get to 5? All of a sudden, no one's had like the real breakthrough year, but but if you got enough guys that essentially double their production from like 2.5 to 5, if a guy like goes up to that 8 number, what did Clavon Chason have a year ago? 9.5. I mean, if you got a guy that kind of got to even a number like that, not some eye-popping Derek Barnett, Myles Garrett level SEC number, but just a better year. All of a sudden, if you have enough guys that do that, it starts really adding up into something. I mean, if you told me that George was going to have a guy that get a dozen sacks, like somebody's just going to have an unbelievable year, I would say the best 2 chances to do that would either be probably Trayvon Walker or Nolan Smith. It'd be one of those 2 guys that I'd say that it's the most likely to occur for, a huge leap for one of those 2 guys. And it'd be great if it happened. But there is a way to have one guy have a great year and it's still not add up defensively what it needs to have. Now, if one guy really explodes for you, then it makes everything easier on the defense in the long run. But I'm almost more interested in the total team number than I am the one individual breakthrough number. My number for a while has been 40. I'd love to see Georgia get 40 sacks. And I would theorize that the best way to get to 40 is not necessarily with one guy having a Chase Young type year. It's with a bunch of guys having a little bit better year than they had a year before. A couple more here. CB asks, is there any chance that Big Ten, Pac-12 players transfer out to other conferences to play this fall? Would the NCAA dare deny that waiver? So when it comes to predicting the NCAA, you just never know. There was a Virginia Tech running back transfer that he got denied his eligibility. NCAA it is a very difficult thing to predict in terms of who you give that to and who you don't. I think you're right. There would be extra, political ramifications to a guy transferring because his league canceled the sport, which we'd have to consider. But ultimately, one of the biggest things going to be is that for a lot of programs, they just don't have the scholarships. Now, for a very good player, can you find a home for him? You typically can. But, I don't mean to come across as a jerk, but there are a lot of Pac-12 players that couldn't find a home in the SEC anyway. Otherwise, they'd have been in this league to begin with. But it is just going to be just a real challenge that for guys that want to go, they got to have a place they can go to. And this has been talked about in other things too, that the most likely destination for a player that enters the transfer portal is the FCS, not another FBS program. It's the FCS. That most guys, when they go in the transfer portal, end up transferring down a level because there's, we think about the high-profile transfers of famous player going from big school to another big school, but the preponderance of what's in the transfer portal are guys who end up at a smaller school, apologies for saying it this way, lesser program, and I would think that the Big Ten, Pac-12 transfer is most likely to be kind of the same thing. Kevin Cook asked about Cade Mays. No, Mays has still not gotten his waiver. That's the other thing the NCAA does. It's not who they do grant it and who they don't grant it to, but who they even choose to give a decision towards. There's just some of these guys that end up waiting forever and just never hearing anything. Dream XP, big prediction from him. He says Kirby's going to unleash the front seven. Even Adam Anderson's going to have 5 sacks. We'll get around 35 sacks with only 10 games. Anderson's an interesting. By the way, you're also bringing up a really good point that you got to. In my mind, every one of my stat benchmark is always on the basis of a 12-game regular season, and this year it's only a 10-game regular season, so you have to recalibrate all that. You're right to say that. I think that Adam Anderson's an interesting name too. If you go back and look at DeAndre Walker in 2017, for as good as Walker was in 2018, his stats were crazy in 2017. I think he's still the high watermark for tackles for loss in a season for Georgia under Kirby Smart, isn't he? Didn't he have like 12.5 in 2017? I believe that may be the most. Maybe Roquan had more than that this year. That particular year, there's a chance he did. But anyway, double-digit tackles for loss season for Walker going back to 2017 in a year in which he was kind of in that designated pass rusher role. I would say that Adam Anderson's still a little bit like, for Georgia now, what DeAndre Walker was in 2017, which is an opportunity just to pin your ears back and go out and, break stuff. That's a good role for Anderson to be in, and he could be used very well in that role. Frank Patterson says if Georgia-Bama was game one, it would give ESPN 4 weeks to build the game up. They would, of course, have to stop talking about I ain't going down that road, Frank, but I know what you're saying. I do think a really, really big first game for the SEC just makes it easier to cut through the clutter of what is going to be a busy time in sports. September is going to be a lot going on, and while we live and die with every aspect of college football, the average sports fan, not even the average college football fan, but the average sports fan just does not do this 24 hours a day the way that many of us do. And so, therefore, as you said, if it's a headline main event type matchup to start the year, it does give you multiple weeks worth of college football's coming, the SEC's coming back. I think there's some real value in that. Real value. I think there's some real value in that. Let me go back over to Facebook here for a moment. And then we got to get ready to go after that. Boy, it's late so fast. I feel like we blink our eyes, it's been 15 minutes. Comment. Keith Fold says, I would rather have a couple of games under our belt before playing Bama. I think a lot of Georgia fans probably would. I think that if my theory is correct, that Georgia and Bama, who were kind of gifted easier games a couple of weeks ago, it may be their turn to get something they don't want this time, and a tough week one opponent may be part of that equation. But that's just kind of my theory on this. Barry Watkins says the reality is any SEC game is huge on TV. It's a big TV product. There's no question about that. John Collins said, didn't the NCAA say there would be no postseason play in reference to the brand of football the NCAA controls, which is the FCS level of play? They've had some doctors that have come out in the last couple of days and had said some pretty dire things. I think it's pretty obvious that the NCAA, the organization, this can be confusing, but the organization, I think, has painted itself as anti-sport in terms of playing this fall. They are taking a hardline stance, which in some cases puts more pressure on the 3 Power 5 leagues still trying to have football, the SEC, ACC, and Big 12, to make sure they get it right. But ultimately, the NCAA has very little control over the regular college football season. They have some oversight and some compliance power, but it's the college football playoff run by the various conferences that actually control the sport of big league, Power 5 level, FBS level football. The NCAA only really controls the FCS, but the NCAA has canceled its fall sports championships. Bobby Bryan, boy, I really appreciate the kind words. That means a ton to me. Thank you very much. Means always happy to have you checking in. Marshall Fleming, thank you for the kind words. Channing McDowell says Mississippi State or Arkansas for the first game. Joe Moody with the great Yogi Berra quote of it's getting late early. It seems like it does get late early this time of year. Michael Webb predicting a big year for Trayvon Walker. Could be 6 to 8 sacks, 10+ tackles for loss. Listen, that's the kind of threshold that I do think he has the potential of achieving. Sophomore year be a time that you could see that occurring for him, especially after he was really on the field a lot a year ago. And by the end of the year, I would say he was probably one of Georgia's most important players. This could be that year where all that comes into fruition for him. I mean, I've said even prior to his first snap at Georgia that if you gave me a percentage of future earnings for anybody in the Georgia roster, I believe that Trayvon Walker would have been my guy on that. And I said that, by the way, even when Andrew Thomas is still in this roster. So, yeah. How about Bobby Powell checking in from Albuquerque, New Mexico? Bobby, that's really cool. Glad to have you here today. Thank you very much. Reggie Walker looking forward to the offense with all the new receivers. He says you definitely got to bring that spread offense. Yeah, I can't wait to see it. I think it's really good. All right, let's see what else. We got to get ready to go. Barry Watkins says, I pray the first game the punter never comes on the field. Yeah, you'd love to see that offense clicking and firing on all cylinders. By the way, good to see Thomas, and I always butcher his last name, and I apologize. Vance Van checking in. Thomas over here says Nakobe Dean's going to do some damage this year. There's a lot of potential right answers from that group of rising sophomores, and definitely Nakobe's one of those. All right, we have got to get ready to go. There's some black jersey talk over here on the Facebook, on the YouTube side of things. I always like seeing that. I'm a lot more pro black jersey than I used to be. I have definitely evolved my opinion on that. Ben Harper says, what's up with the kicking game? That is still a very much unknown. I think that's very, very unknown. I have suggested that it wouldn't surprise me to see Jake Camarda get involved in the place kicking competition a bit. But when you have a guy that was as good as Rodrigo Blankenship was the last few years, it is just a chance that Georgia's not as solid in the kicking game as it was in the hot rod era. In fact, it's probably a really good chance that's not the case, and you just got to find a way to win even still. Work around that to have success. But there's a possibility that there are some challenges associated with finding a new kicker in the absence of hot rod, and it's a big story for Georgia, no question. Nicholas King, important question. We'll finish with this. He says, is it official that we open with Bama? No, it's not official. As you said before, based on the current understanding of the schedule, that would have been Georgia's first SEC game. But we know a lot of these dates now have to be moved for various reasons. I would guess that the schedule looks more different than it does the same. If I had to guess, that's what I would guess. We saw some examples from the Big 12 schedule where, like Texas, Oklahoma maintained the same date it was supposed to be played on. So maybe the SEC could do some of that kind of stuff. My guess is we see, if I had to guess, I'm saying we see a good bit of date movement for these games tonight. Georgia, Alabama, who knows where it falls. We'll find out that this afternoon, 3 p.m. I think is the scheduled time for week 1. And then the full schedule coming out 7 p.m. tonight, and that'll be on television. And I'll be live on the DawgNation video channels breaking all of that down with you. Big thanks to all of you for being here as a part of our R.S. Andrews cool down. R.S. Andrews is one you can trust for your air conditioning, your heating, your plumbing, electric needs. That means if your water heater goes out, in many cases, R.S. Andrews can replace it for you the same day, which is always really good news. Also, for our friends at the AJC, doing a great job of keeping you up to date on all of your Atlanta news now. As I mentioned before, there was the same photo we saw of the Alabama students. There was some attention received for some North Georgia students up in Dahlonega. You can get the latest on the coronavirus at ajc.com. There are also some in-person education beginning around the metro Atlanta area. Some systems already been back in place. Others going to get going here. Find out about how all of the school reopenings are going. ajc.com for that as well. And really good stuff when it comes to like the school lunch your kids like to eat, whether it be, lunch you're making for them. You want to make, feel good about what you're doing for that. You can get some tips and some ideas there, ajc.com on that front too. Atlanta News Now at ajc.com. Thanks for being here on our program here today. Our R.S. Andrews Cool Down is a part of DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door. I'll see you tonight on video for the schedule announcement. And back here tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for DawgNation Daily, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. We'll look forward to seeing you then, everybody. For more DawgNation videos, check out youtube.com/DawgNation.